Okay, here we go. Happy Friday. It's January 3rd, 2025. We have an entire NHL slate to cover. We had another night packed with NBA games. We take a look at the NFL MVP conversation going into the last week of the season. And we'll discuss a couple of more notable MLB players, Jack Flaherty and Nolan Arenado, both of whom are looking for new homes or potentially not, in the case of Nolan Arenado. This is the Early Game Podcast. Listen to the show in the mornings on your commute, whenever and wherever, so you can be a part of today's sports conversations. Let's go. Okay, let's start off with the college football playoff. So, initially, all the games were scheduled for New Year's Day for the college football playoff. Actually, one game was played New Year's Eve. Penn State won that one. And Georgia and Notre Dame were scheduled to play on New Year's Day. And obviously, due to the unfortunate events taking place in New Orleans, that game got postponed. So it took place yesterday, Thursday, January 2nd, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And Notre Dame pretty much took over this game. They won 23-10. After all that was happening, all the noise, Notre Dame comes away, and they're in the Final Four of the college football playoff. So they join Penn State, Texas, and Ohio State as the Final Four teams for the first ever expanded college football playoff. And this game, it wasn't that great. Riley Leonard threw for 90 yards, rushed for 80, threw one touchdown. Gunnar Stockton had the better game. Threw for a touchdown, 234 yards for Georgia. The big story of this one, though, and the biggest thing trending online was Parker Jones. So there's a play down the sideline for Georgia when Georgia was on offense. The play gets called back for referee interference. And everybody's wondering, who is this guy that is not dressed for the game, just a jersey? Who is this guy, number 39? And quickly, people were able to figure out and go to Georgia's website and their roster and find out this guy was none other than Parker Jones. He was a walk-on. And he was the one who committed the error. And everyone was kind of going in on him hard. I was thinking, how does this guy get so much notoriety online, so much popularity, his name is trending, yet I feel like the thing that he did, the event he committed, the reason we're talking about him, such a silly thing. If you think about it, I wish he would have done something better than just interfering with the referee. Because had he gone to midfield, pulled his pants down, if he streaked down the field naked, at least he would have had more of a story to talk about and more of a reason to make popularity out of the situation and out of the fact that he's trending. He merely gets to go and say, I got in the way of the ref on the sideline. And so that was pretty much the big thing that happened out of the game. Was Parker Jones making a name for himself for kind of a stupid reason, honestly, and kind of, he's trending for a reason that's, in the end of the day, irrelevant. Not funny. Like, I wish it just would have at least been funny, the reason why he's trending so much. Just got in the way of the referee. Let's move on to hockey. So last night, there were 24 teams in action. A lot of teams, a lot of games. First game between the Hurricanes and the Panthers. was the battle of the top two teams in the Eastern of two of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. The Hurricanes beat the Panthers 3-1. Jacob Slavin had a goal and an assist for the Canes. Moving on to Bruins Rangers. Rangers won this one 2-1. I know, based on the way I've spoken about the Rangers in the past, hard to believe that they actually won a game, and it has felt like an eternity since the last time they won a game. They're 3-7 in their last 10. Mika Zibanejad scored his 7th goal of the season, which it's just been an absurdly disappointing season for him. If you don't know, for context, scoring 7 goals at this point in the season, this far into the season, for a player who was supposed to be a prolific scorer like Mika Zibanejad is utterly pathetic. And the thing that I actually liked about the game last night was we saw some more of the younger players getting some ice time. Brett Berard scored for the Rangers. This was their first game since Igor Shesterkin went to the IR. And Jonathan Quick played a nice game. Wild at Caps. The Wild won this one 4-3. I got my pick wrong, blah, blah, blah. I made a pick yesterday. I said Washington -1.5. But you know what? The most important thing of this game was OVI, baby! We're on OVI Watch. This podcast is an Alexander Ovechkin podcast. He is 24 goals away from breaking the record, from breaking the great one, Wayne Gretzky's record. We are on OVI Watch. He is 24 goals away. I don't think people realize how historic this is. The NHL has been around for more than 100 years. This is astonishing what we're witnessing. I don't think Ovi gets people. The funny thing about Alexander Ovechkin is he is a name that everybody knows. If you think of hockey, you think of Crosby, you think of maybe Connor McDavid now is making a name for himself. And I'm just saying this from the context for people who don't really follow hockey. These are names that you would know. If you read them, you would say, this guy's a hockey player. You know who Sidney Crosby is? I think back in the day, a couple years ago, you knew who Henrik Lundqvist was. Alexander Ovechkin's another one of those names you know. And he is about to break the goal record. I mean, the fact that this is happening and could happen this season is mind-blowing. And we are going to be following that meticulously. We move on. Red Wings Jackets. The Red Wings beat the Jackets 5-4. James Van Riemsdyk scored 2 goals for the Blue Jackets. The Maple Leafs beat the Islanders 2-1. Bobby McMahon scored both the goals for the Leafs. Islanders' loss just goes to show the sad state that hockey in New York currently is in. The Stars beat the Senators 4-2. Rupint scored 2 goals for the Stars. Senators scored 2 goals on only 13 shots. The Ducks won 4-3 in overtime. Troy Terry scored the overtime goal. He had 2 goals and an assist. The Avs beat the Sabres 6-5 in overtime. Devin Tays scored an overtime goal. He had a goal and 2 assists himself. Utah Hockey beat the Flames 5-3. Lawson Krause had 2 goals for the Utens. The Utes, whatever you want to call them. I don't know if I like Utah Hockey Club or if they need a name. I'm still deciding that. I think at the moment I like Utah Hockey Club, but I think eventually I'm going to want them. I think I'm going to get tired of it fast. Let's give them a name. The Golden Knights beat the Flyers 5-2. They scored 3 in the third to win. They're surging, man. First place in the Pacific, second best record in the Western Conference. They're looking to avenge themselves after a down year last season, winning the Cup the year before. And so they're looking to resurge this season and continue a unbelievable start to that organization. Okay, Canucks at Kraken. Canucks won 4-3 in a shootout. JT Miller had the deciding goal in that one in the shootout. Sharks beat the Lightning 2-1. That was their first home win since November. And finally, in the hockey world yesterday, Canada lost to Czech in the World Juniors. Is their second year in a row, not making the semifinal in that tournament. It's a very notable tournament. You can kind of look to that tournament. All the stars from the NHL, they always play there first in the World Juniors when they're coming up in the minor leagues and in college. Man, the future is not looking bright for Canada in hockey, and that's saying something. Okay, let's move on. The NFL MVP debate. Everyone's been wondering who's going to win the MVP. There have been 4 main candidates who have emerged over the last month or so as this season has come to an end and people have tried to decide who will be the MVP. And so the names that have been out there all along, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, those names have been kind of the ones that have been debated for the last month to 2 months. Probably about just before Thanksgiving. We were already kind of getting ready to end the season, starting to feel like it was going to end soon, and just thinking about who's going to be the MVP. And Saquon Barkley, throughout all that, has been part of that conversation. You don't think about a running back when you think MVP. He's obviously having a historic season. He is 100 yards away from breaking the single season rushing record, and he has been ridiculously good for the Eagles. And so those 3 names are the ones that have been discussed. This past week, Joe Burrow has emerged as being a part of this conversation. The funny thing about that is it's hard for me to wrap my head when you just think narrative. Because the narrative is important, regardless of if you... I disagree with people if you want to think that we can't just say, well, we hadn't spoken about Joe Burrow before this week. I think it matters. I think it matters that we have not spoken about Joe Burrow before this week. It's because as an MVP, your presence needs to be felt. Josh Allen with the Bills, his presence is felt every single week. We talk about him every single week. Sports Talk, every show, has a segment on Monday morning about Josh Allen. And this isn't the Jets or the Giants. This isn't the Steelers, who any excuse to talk about them, or the Cowboys, any excuse to talk about them, we will. No, Josh Allen gets talked about every single week because he has his footprint on every single game the Bills play. And to me, that's why narrative matters when it comes to MVP. Stats matter too. And Joe Burrow is leading in a lot of them. And so is Lamar Jackson. They are both beating Josh Allen in a lot of statistics that matter. Yards, touchdowns. But when you want to think about most valuable player, who is most valuable to their team? With the added context of quarterback, it's hard to argue that nobody has mattered more to their team than Josh Allen. For instance, you think about before the season, the prognosticators predicting that the Bills would finish at best third in their division. Shows that come to mind are the Rich Eisen show. Remember very clearly watching that. They were so convinced that it was the Bills' year to take a step back. That Josh Allen could not do it himself without Stephon Diggs and without Gabe Davis. Everyone was so convinced that Aaron Rodgers was going to be able to get it done for the Jets. More so than Josh Allen. And they also believed that Tua Tagovailoa was going to be able to do the same thing and finish ahead of the Bills. Most prognosticators. Honestly, thinking back, one of the only people, I think, on TV that did not believe that wanted to that wanted to fade the Bills was Nick Wright, who's always historically been anti-Bills, anti-Josh Allen. He said there's too much hate going on right now. We're now underrating Josh Allen. And what does Josh Allen proceed to do? He wins the division. He goes 13-3. To this moment now, I mean, he's going to start Sunday. He's not going to play after he starts and waves to the crowd and gives his lineman a handshake and walks off the field to keep his consecutive starts record intact. But the fact that Josh Allen was able to do what he did, beating the Chiefs, beating the Lions, almost being able to beat the Rams after a horrible defensive showing against the Rams, barely losing to the Texans. They got blown out by Baltimore, who, side note, as a Bills fan, I do not want them to play Baltimore in the playoffs. That is the team I'm scared of. Back to the conversation. Does Lamar deserve to be MVP? Yes, he deserves to be MVP. Does Joe Burrow deserve to be MVP? If they make the playoffs, he should be in the conversation. The fact that we didn't feel Joe Burrow's presence for so long, until last week, I think takes him out of the conversation. I think Saquon is taken out of the conversation, unfortunately, because he's a running back. Had there been poor quarterback play this year, I would think about it more. But unfortunately for Saquon, Lamar and Josh have just played too well this season. And I think in recent years, when Lamar has won the MVP, the big argument was his presence was felt. He was most valuable to his team. And this year, I think we should use that argument for Josh Allen. Okay, let's move on to the NBA. The Pacers beat the Heat 128-115. Tyrese Halliburton had 33 points and 15 rebounds for the double-double. Pascal Siakam had double-double also, 18 points, 11 rebounds. I've criticized him in the past for shooting too many threes. Yesterday he only shot 2. He's 1 for 2. Pacers currently hold the 8th seed in the East. Kel'el Ware led the Heat with 25 points. But the big story coming out of that game and coming out of Heat Nation did not have to do with the game itself. Jimmy Butler, who yesterday had another 9-point performance, back-to-back nights, pretty much identical stat lines, 9 points, 27 minutes last night. After the game, he does a press conference. And he is asked whether he can get his joy back playing for the Miami Heat. And initially he had said he is not currently enjoying playing basketball. He was asked if he can get that joy back, and he said, for the Heat, and he said probably not. Later on last night, The Athletic published a report that Jimmy Butler has requested a trade. And the funny thing about that request, that the way they reported it, was they said anywhere, he would be willing to go anywhere. I think a couple weeks ago when Shams Charania initially said that he wanted a trade, I think he said specific teams he would want to go to. Now, he's willing to go anywhere. And this is very fascinating. We've spoken about it before. Jimmy Butler is a great player. The Heat are currently the 6th seed in the East. And Eastern Conference, that I've said, is not particularly strong per se. It is strong. I'll take that back. I just think that the top teams are all pretty beatable. The Cavs, the Knicks, and the Celtics. And so if you're the Heat, you can possibly, if you're not stubborn about it, you can make yourself better here and make a run. Trade Jimmy Butler. Do it sooner rather than later. Get that chemistry going with whatever assets you get back. Whether that's picks, okay? I understand if you want to trade a player like that for picks. But maybe you can get some good young pieces to add into your rotation and make a serious run. And so, over the next couple of weeks before the trade deadline, this Jimmy Butler situation seems to be something we will be discussing pretty frequently. Okay, let's go on to the Celtics at Wolves. Celtics won 118-115. Jason Tatum had 33 points. Celtics hold on to the 3 seed in the East with the Knicks on their tail, 1 game behind them. 1.5 games behind them, excuse me. Julius Randle led the Wolves with 27 points. They currently have the 8 seed out west. The Nets beat the Bucks 113-110. The Bucks went on a 20-0 run late in the fourth. Cut their deficit. They were down 21. They cut it to 1. But the Nets held on. Cam Johnson had 26 for the Nets. Giannis had 27 for the Bucks. It's a tough loss for the Bucks. They're the 5 seed in the East. And they could have used, they've made a great comeback after significant early season struggles. They could have beaten a team like the Nets. They could have used a win against a team like the Nets. The Thunder beat the Clippers 116-98. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had 29 for the Thunder. They have a 5-game lead in the West. Meanwhile, the Clippers and their terrible logo have this currently hold the 6th seed in the West. Not much to talk about for them besides a 26-point night for Amir Coffey. The Warriors beat the Sixers 138-105. Steph Curry scored 30. He was 8 from 8 from 3. Joel Embiid did not rest last night. He scored 28. I guess that what the Sixers will do is on back-to-backs, they will not play Embiid in one of those back-to-backs, which to me is like, that doesn't bode well for the playoffs. You would think that he should try to get his legs underneath him. Maybe soon down the road they'll start playing him in back-to-backs. But Joel Embiid is, to me, an enigma. Lakers beat the Blazers 114-106. LeBron scored 38. Man, is he just producing at such a high level at such a old age. Lakers have won 6 old age relative to sports age. I want to put that out there for all of our older listeners. Lakers have won 6 of their last 8. And finally, we have to update you on the Jaden Ivey situation. Yesterday, we spoke about the fact that Jaden Ivey was carted off the floor. According to Shams, he reported that he sustained a broken fibula on his left leg, and so he's going to miss significant time, which is a huge blow for the Pistons, who I have a soft spot for. I think that they're a fun, pesky team, great all-around scoring. And so that was it from the NBA yesterday. Okay. 'Tis the season in MLB that we just kind of talk about free agents, trade candidates that are trending. And so, after Corbin Burnes chose to sign with the Diamondbacks, the shocking move over the weekend, a question remained for the Baltimore Orioles. What were they going to do to fill the void in their rotation? In the same way, the Yankees lost significant value when Juan Soto signed with the Mets. Oh, I love saying that. The same way the Orioles lost significant value in their rotation when Corbin Burnes left. And so the question is, how do they replace that? Their name has not been brought up with Roki Sasaki, although they've mentioned, the Sasaki camp has mentioned that there could be some more teams added, so you never know what happens there. I guess now that I'm thinking about it, Sasaki did mention that he wants other Japanese players to play with, and the Orioles brought over Kamiyuki Sagano from the NPB. So maybe Sasaki decides he wants to meet with the Orioles. But the Orioles are said to have interest in signing a free agent pitcher. And one of the main names that's been brought up in recent days is Jack Flaherty. And Flaherty, if you remember, pitched for the Orioles in the second half of 2023, 2 seasons ago. That did not go well for him. Pitched to a 6.75 ERA in 9 games. Then he signed with the Tigers in the offseason on a kind of trial contract. Pitched fantastic for them. Got traded to the Dodgers, won a World Series with them. And now is looking for a new team after the Dodgers have added a bunch of pieces and they're considered the front runners for Sasaki. So doesn't seem like they're going to bring Flaherty back. And so the Orioles now are mentioned as a possible destination for Flaherty, for them to bring him back. If I was an Orioles fan, I would be very uneasy about this. I understand that he bounced back last year. There is still going to be something mentally in the back of Jack Flaherty's mind that he will not be able to overcome his performance issues that he had the last time he was in Baltimore. And not only that, this is going to be a big contract for him. He will get a nice amount of years and a nice amount of money. And so you have to think that if things don't go well for him, he may not be as motivated as he was this past season to bounce back. That's not a knock against him. I don't mean that in a bad way. You can't control your emotions, your mental state sometimes. And so mentally, if he doesn't perform well again, he may check out. See Jordan Montgomery. Pretty much the exact same situation. That being said, the Orioles need a piece in this rotation. Badly. The rotation as it stands now is Zach Eflin, Grayson Rodriguez, Dean Kramer, Albert Suarez, and as I mentioned before, Tomoyuki Sagano. The Orioles are a great team. They have a lot of great young pieces. They underperformed last season after very high expectations. I picked them to win the AL East before the season. But in a wide open in a wide open AL, and the new wild card format, there is no reason for them not to go all in on pitching. It is a tough AL East. I get that. The Yankees are the best team in the AL. The Red Sox are not far behind them, whether they're probably a top 5 team on paper right now. But the Orioles cannot afford to take a step back here. They need to make a big move, especially for their rotation. They may need to take a chance on Flaherty. They may need to give him the money he's demanding because they missed on Corbin Burns. Another player that's being rumored to land in the AL East is Nolan Arenado. And rumors in the last couple of days are that the Cardinals may not end up trading him. And so earlier this offseason, the Cardinals had a trade lined up with the Astros in which Nolan Arenado vetoed the trade. He had a no-trade clause. He vetoed it. The Astros proceeded to sign Christian Walker. Yes, different positions, but they filled an infield spot. And so now, the last couple weeks, Arenado's been linked to the Yankees, who need a corner infielder, or any infielder for that matter, because they lost Gleyber Torres to the Tigers last weekend, or 2 weekends ago. And the Red Sox, who are just always looking to add. As they should, by the way. They could use as many pieces as they can get. The reluctancy is that the Cardinals are unwilling to eat money for the 2 remaining years of Arenado's contract. He's owed around $25 million a year. I cannot stand when that gets in the way of trading a player in Arenado's position. You have a player who's coming off a bad year. You have to be willing to make concessions if you want to get something back. This would be criminal for the Cardinals not to trade him now. The only reason I could see them trying to keep him is for him to have a bounce back year and try to trade him on the last year of his contract. But he's going to be 1 year older. Take on the money. You're not a poor organization. You are pretty much a top market organization. You are a big market organization. St. Louis, a rich history. Trade this guy. Take on money. Bring back some prospects. You already lost Paul Goldschmidt. You're not going to be able to compete with Nolan Arenado. Take on the money and trade him. This is the same thing I was thinking about Marcus Stroman and the Yankees. I've been hearing about how the Yankees want to trade Marcus Stroman But at the same time, they want the other teams to take the money on for him. You can't have your cake and eat it too. If you have a bad player, you can't then ask teams to take the money and send prospects back. It doesn't work like that. The Cardinals need to rethink this. Take on some of the money. Cut your losses. Get some good prospects back. All right, that's it from me. Enjoy your weekend. We're going to have a packed show Monday. A lot of football to talk about. We're going to have a ton of stuff. Maybe there'll be a baseball free agent signing to talk about. Who knows? This is the Early Game Podcast. Have a great rest of your day.